Welcome to another episode of Progress, Potential, and Possibilities, discussions with fascinating people designing a better tomorrow for all of us. I'm your host, Ira Pastor.
Welcome, everybody, again to another episode of our show, bringing another really awesome guest today. On the show, we have the honor of being joined today by Evan Mathis, who is a three-time Emmy Award-winning multidisciplinary creative director and filmmaker. His work spans areas from sports to entertainment to brand storytelling, as well as cinematic short form content. Evan recently expanded his creative scope into the deeply human, health-centered storytelling area with his short film, The Hemingway, which he co-directed with ALS patient Patrick Sean O'Brien. And the film offers a really intimate, unfiltered, darkly humorous look at life with severe disabilities. And the film has been celebrated on the festival circuit, where it attained many awards, including Best Documentary Short at San Francisco International Film Festival. And Evan has quite a portfolio. He has a background in fine art and journalism, but he has been active in sports and competition with major campaigns like for Daytona 500, US Open, NFL on Fox, college football on Fox. In the entertainment area, he's been involved in such blockbuster titles as World War Z, Furious 6, Homeland, Monk, and he's worked also extensively with various brand and lifestyle companies, including campaigns for L'Oreal, the Discover Card, Scion, Velocity. And in addition to the Emmy Awards, he's also been awarded from One Show, Clio's, Promax BDA, and his work and projects have been featured in all major publications around the world. He's also an extremely sought-after speaker internationally. A lot of really cool topics to get into today, and really honored to have him with us. Evan Mathis, thank you so much for taking time to come on the show today.
Wow, that's quite an introduction you gave me. It's very, very nice to be here. Especially considering the project that we're talking about today, the Hemingway. Um, came about in sort of a backhanded way. I've known my co-director Patrick for 20 years. We kind of came up as directors in New York City, in the late 90s and early 2000s. And he sent me a script and said, do you want to direct this with me? And I read the script and immediately said, yeah. I love projects like this that are a challenge, that don't offer maybe the budget that I would love, but that offer the creativity that allows sort of that allows you to kind of do whatever works.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about Patrick, because as you mentioned, you've known him for a while. He was diagnosed with ALS about 20 years ago now, and about 10 years ago, he actually created a documentary chronicling it was sort of longer form, the early progression with ALS. Can you just talk a little bit about him and a little bit of sort of what's happened between his initial diagnosis up to the point where he contacted you again for this particular, short film?
Yeah, I mean, Patrick and I, in our early days, we got to make crazy videos for Spike TV and did a lot of like crazy, just random weird video projects and music videos, and we never really lost touch. We always we kept in touch, and I helped him as much as I could with his film Trans Fatty Lives, which documented his progression with the disease, Um, I'm even in the film. Uh, and but to see kind of the thing that keeps Patrick alive, and for those that don't know, ALS is a disease that usually um, takes its owner's, the disease haver's life in 3 to 5 years. It progresses very quickly. It's utterly debilitating. Um, and I think the one thing that's sort of really kept Patrick uh, going is the fact that he's got creative output that he wants to see to fruition. He's still making stuff. He still has great ideas. And the fact that he goes out and still makes a bunch of crazy stuff is super inspiring to everybody, including me. So Patrick, his kind of creative spirit isn't tamed by the body that won't do what his brain wants it to do anymore.
Yeah, that's and people that will see the show, see the movie will realize this right away. But we're talking about what is considered late stage, very advanced ALS, loss of limb function, speech, inability to swallow, inability to breathe on your own, but nonetheless cognitive functions completely preserved. So completely perfect up here. Yeah, I mean, could you say a few words, Evan, about sort of because again, if Patrick came back into your life, before the Hemingway and said, "Hey, you want to help me make another film?" And here was a shorter script, I guess, than the previous one. But could you say sort of the sort of your first? We'll get into everything that goes on in the film, but sort of the initial perception when you first got this script and like, oh, these are some different topics that I don't normally touch on.
Yeah, I mean, to get into, like, Patrick has always been a wild man. Like, he's always the one that's going to come up with an idea, like for one of his spike spots that was called Supermodel Meat Sports, which is literally throwing sliced meat at bikini models. And so like to get the script for the Hemingway and see kind of I read through it but with my Patrick filter on, like no, understanding what was coming my way, but then also, you know, to me, it was a challenge to not just take the script and put what was on paper onto the screen, but to also tell Patrick's story of kind of how he got there, which is why the script opens with a very long single shot of what it takes for him, or what it took for him to actually write the first sentence of this script. Um, and so, to get into, you know, reading a script that's, about how someone with ALS deals with, bodily functions that we all take for granted. That was not a shock really, because I know Patrick so well. But I think that it's a bit of a surprise for those that haven't seen the film to understand that this film is about more than just sort of living with ALS. It's like living with all of the things that everybody has to do, even with ALS. Beyond the struggle to communicate, beyond the social interactions that are just as fraught as anybody else's. You know, but to do it and to kind of keep Patrick's spirit in the film, but then also kind of take what was initially, tossed out as one of Patrick's wild ideas and try and build upon that to sort of show the process, all of the processes that Patrick goes through from, how he interacts with people to how he writes, his creative ideas to, his best friend, the television, to how he has to be showered. So it was an interesting process, and uh, I've helped through the years. I always, every time I'm in Boston, I go and visit Patrick, and and he's always asking me to spice up his coffee, with various substances. We won't don't want to get him in too much trouble with his nurses, but he still likes to have a good time, and he's still the same crazy, big madman that's just kind of stuck in the bed.
Mhm. It's interesting. I mean, because on the site for the movie, there's a quote from you. You said, your biggest obstacle, talking again about bodily functions, was staying true to Patrick's vision, but how do I make this major scene and part of the movie that's about taking a shit and not making it revolting? And you do a really good job of that. I mean, in essence, you're balancing humor on one hand, keeping a person's dignity on the other, and then sort of this underlying thing like, look, here's a disease that many of us are probably unfamiliar with. We don't really see the human face of it, and something as simple as this becomes a major part of your daily experience. And I would love you to just talk a little bit about what went into making that particular part of the movie, and how you balanced everything. And I think you did brilliantly, but please.
Um, well, I'll tell you this: we were there on a Wednesday, which is one of the days that Patrick, is showered and evacuates his bowels. And so we could have literally shown the entire process in all its glory. And it was it's something to behold. Uh, but that was Patrick. Patrick was because when we were talking about this initially, Patrick was like, how are we going to handle the nudity? And I'm like, what? And he's like, I want to shoot I actually want to shoot the process. And, and so I didn't want, like, Patrick's work is very unafraid of crossing boundaries and pushing people. And the way that, I wanted this to be palatable, but I also wanted to show, all of the stress and agony of the process, and the work that the people that work with him as caretakers have to do to just have regular bodily function.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's and it's not something that I shy away from either, like hard subjects, hard topics.
Yep.
Um but to literally have somebody say, this is the day you know that I have to take a shit, and it's a whole process, and you should come and film it with a crew. That was uh definitely something that crossed my mind. Like, how do we show this without it being um, just too graphic? Because like there's a fine line of sure, we could absolutely be 100% veristic in our take of showing this process, but then Patrick's sense of humor, my sense of humor, I think allowed us to think about some different ways to kind of show how this actually happens.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And can you just say words of why it's called a Hemingway, and how that connects up with it? Because I wasn't sure if that
Yes.
was a okay. Please.
Well, the it's a bit of a misdirect, the title,
Okay.
in the fact that Hemingway, Ernest Hemingway as a writer, was very profound,
Sure.
and Patrick's process of a bowel movement is pretty profound in itself. And the fact that, like, for him to take a good shit is terribly profound as well. And so, like, a good shit for him is equatable to
Right.
a Hemingway novel, or it
Right.
takes as much effort, it takes as much sort of resolve as the old man in the sea to come back and keep the swordfish. So I think it's an apt metaphor for the
Absolutely.
things that he has to do every single week. And
Absolutely.
I'm glad that we were able to keep that as the title because we were not referring to anybody in particular. So it was, it definitely sort of ended up working out for, for the best in being able to use that as the title. And also, it does sort of create an air of mystery when you haven't seen the movie.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Very cool. Um, you mentioned before the scene early on where Patrick is painstakingly writing this single sentence in the script using this eye tracking device, and here we are on the cusp of 2026. We still we Mr. Musk is out there, talking about things like Neuralink and promising every ALS patient, not to mention people with brain injury and spinal cord injury, everything else, that, we're going to hook you up tomorrow. But the truth is, for many people, and especially those with severe disabilities, there's still a significant gap between where we are and on 20, the cusp of 2026 and the promise of some of these futuristic tools. Can you just say a couple of words about that as well? Because I thought that was kind of profound as well.
Yeah, Patrick's eye writer is called a Toby, and it's absolutely critical for his communication to the outside world. He does have cues where yes and no. Yes, I believe is he can raise his eyebrows still. No, is he can smile, or maybe it's the opposite. I'll have to go back and look, but to be able to only communicate with two words is super difficult. But
Right.
then the technology, and there's a lot of folks that have tried to improve this iWriter technology. Apple has made great strides with its iPad. Um,
Hmm.
there's various VR components, but the one thing that works for Patrick right now is this device that allows him to type one letter at a time with his eyes by selecting the letter, blinking to uh, show that that's the right selection. It does some predictive text, and actually that was a fun part of the movie is like because he had already typed this whole sentence previously, it wanted to
Hmm.
use the machine wanted to use predictive text to complete it for him. So I had to do a lot of composite work on the Toby device to not
Hmm.
show the predictive text. So it was a lot of the sort of um, workaday VFX stuff that nobody ever really talks about. And that was another big part of this film was that we shot everything in one day.
Hmm.
And it was kind of at the end of the pandemic. We had one director of photography who had to back out because of a back injury. We had a second director of photography who came in and was able to do it, but he got COVID the first time we tried to shoot it. So we had to push it back because the last thing you want to do is bring COVID into an ALS facility. Um,
Right.
so, it was this whole film was produced on, very much willpower, sheer willpower, because we had an audio person, a camera person. I was pulling focus, and working with Patrick to communicate, how all the shots, were going to come together. Um, and we shot all of the live action footage in his room in a single day, actually 2 days.
Hmm.
And then a lot of the film revolved around kind of going into Patrick's mind and how to visualize that. And there's actually a lot of very small things in the VFX portion of the film that are little sort of you know uh, Pixar style
Yeah.
cues to kind of Patrick's world. Like Patrick and I, when we lived in the East Village in New York, like Patrick's favorite thing was to go to Katz's and get the pastrami sandwich.
Sure.
And so, I imagined this world of the future where Katz's, is on top of this
Yep.
futuristic skyscraper. And if you look very carefully, I took a 3D LiDAR scan of Patrick in his room. And so the only person in the Katz's in the sky is Patrick in his bed. Um, it's and just doing stuff like making uh the all like the tubes that run through the city, are all matched to Patrick's ventilator tube. The and then the idea that the Hemingway is, museum worthy was kind of,
Right, 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 right.
that it belongs on a pedestal, and that it's that it belongs in a room with uh, globally recognized pieces of art. So like there was a lot of thought that kind of went into how all of those things are really just a part of Patrick. So, the
Mhm.
world inside of Patrick's mind. And so while it took 2 days to shoot, it took a year and a half to get through edit and post. So, like this is the again an absolute passion project. Where we were able to pull in Doug Prey, who's a very very well known documentary editor. Doug had done Patrick's film Trans Fatty Lives. And then Darren Hallinan from Dolby Labs did all of our audio. And then literally it was just me and Doug, and I did all of the post, all of the composite work, all of the 3D work. Um, and then uh, and then Tom Poole was gracious enough to do our color. Tom, for those that don't know, is probably one of the most sought out colorists in the world. Last time I had a Super Bowl spot, I tried to get Tom to do the color for it, and he was too busy. But then when I showed him this film, he's like, "I got you, man. I got you." And so he stepped in to do the color. So literally all of these super talented people coming in to really kind of make this project much bigger than the $3,500 budget that we had to shoot it.
Yeah, and I really appreciated the scene, the scene you were talking about in terms of the imagination and the escapism and sort of this being unbound by paralysis. And yeah, I really appreciate again the way you did that, and sort of reinforcing this whole while the body is gone, the mind is still there, fully preserved to go anywhere in the universe, or to the top of a building with cat delis. I really like
One
that.
second, please.
Yeah. What
Yeah.
and there's a really interesting moment where Patrick talks about this other patient in the facility that decides to, as he says, unplug, and just which leads to their death. And I'm not. Could you talk a little bit? I mean, I'm not exactly sure. Sort of, we talked about assisted suicide and sort of various tools and technologies out there, and I don't know how in the world of ALS, in terms of not wanting treatment, or it doesn't equate to okay, I'm going to take this high dose of barbiturates or whatever and end my life. But could you say a couple words about that particular event, and sort of how that fed into what you were trying to get across here? Because this is clearly the scene of assisted suicide, especially in these extremely unmet conditions, is becoming more and more prevalent in our society. And I'd love if you could just talk about that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And the character of Joel was based on a real person, but fictionalized, and
Sure.
enough to sort of. But it's not uncommon for folks with ALS to reach a point where they just have had enough. It's a huge struggle to do literally anything, which is kind of the point of the film. And the character of Joel, he basically decides that he's gonna go and, like a wounded cat, go crawl, into another building and turn off his ventilator. Um, and it's literally the last thing that this person can do with their own physical agency
Mhm.
is to like use that last bit of strength to to do to sort of end the struggle that they've been in. And it's a very you know it's not meant to be uh like something to be really fretted over in the film because you
Right.
understand why. It's almost a release um, from the tortures of living with ALS. Um,
Right.
so it's tough, but and it happens a lot. There's a lot of people that don't have kind of the the they don't see a future with living with ALS, and it's
Hmm.
entirely understandable. Um, and again, I think that's kind of what sets Patrick apart. Is that he has goals that he hasn't achieved that he can still achieve while living with the disease. Um, and for a lot of people, that's just not the case.
Right. Um, Evan, what kind of response have you gotten from, not just, viewers, but advocates for ALS, research organizations? I mean, I've done this last year, I think 5 or 6 episodes on sort of biotech companies that are trying to research new drugs, and everyone's, I mean, they're doing their work, but everyone's out there. ALS, while it's extremely important and unmet, it sometimes gets buried below the Alzheimer's and the Parkinson's and multiple sclerosis, and everyone's like fighting for that last dollar. I mean, in terms of especially in this era where we're sort of cutting medical funding and downsizing a lot of what's going on in Washington. Any interesting folks reaching out to you that are just saying, thank you for, helping to create awareness of why we need to invest in science and technology for conditions like this?
At every screening, there's a few people afterwards that have had, that will talk to me and say, my father had ALS, my uncle had ALS, my brother had ALS, and they have a deeper understanding of sort of the why of this film. Um, just in terms of like they understand the struggle probably even better because they've been in the room while whoever it is that they know had made their own Hemingway. Um, it's and so there's kind of a deeper connection on that level.
Mhm.
But then the other thing is that I've also spoken to a lot of people who aren't aware, that like if you were to just observe a person with ALS, you wouldn't understand that there's a lot going on in here. It's a sort of human condition that, if you can't speak and respond and, articulate, there's a preconceived notion that you're not thinking. And that's absolutely not the case. And so, one of the things that I really like about this film is that it opens up those doors, and shows people kind of uh, what somebody else's experience with living with this disease is, and that's like, that's the whole thing, the whole sort of basis of the film is that Patrick is living with the disease, not, he, and to go back to his earlier film of Trans Fatty Lives, like part of what he went through there was that there's not a lot of places for people with ALS to live. You know, most people get put, like Patrick was, into a convalescent home where people there don't understand, that somebody here is trying to live a life. And there's no physical interaction, there's no communication, and basically they're just shoved in a corner to die. Um, Patrick was fortunate enough to be taken in to the Leonard Florence Center for Living, which is a specific care facility for people with ALS. And,
Mhm.
they do everything they can to, as it says right on the tin, it's a center for living. It's for a place for living with ALS. And, so you've got folks there that are in various stages of the disease, from sort of first losing physical mobility all the way up to the end stages. And so it's a community of folks that sort of all live under the same banner. And it's, what we're trying to do with the film is all, raise awareness not only just about the disease, but what it's like to live with it.
You do an excellent job of it. I have to say that. And again, um, what's coming up? I mean, in terms of, I know you're out there on different circuits in terms of film festivals and things of this nature. I mean, do you Patrick, get out there together, and then sort of what's coming up in terms of 2026, not just in terms of the Hemingway, but other projects? Are you going to be doing more sort of health related stuff now that you've sort of experienced this unique type of film and a unique storytelling? What's happening?
Well, Patrick has already, got his, he's got Doug and myself and some of the other A team already working on a new film. I don't want to give away too much about what that film is about yet because
Okay.
it's still very much in development. Um, but it's definitely going to, live in the same world and be just as challenging to the audience as, Patrick's previous films. Um, so it's there's no slowing him on. We're luckily, the our film has done well on the festival circuit, and we're Academy qualified now. I think that's about as much as the Academy allows me to say at this point. But so we're hoping for a good voting season, and we'll see what happens with the film from there. But it still has a few festivals to run in yet. Um,
Awesome.
uh, I'm actually going to go to Berlin on Monday for
Nice.
because we won the most inspiring film at the WSXA Barcelona, and there is the European Unification Awards, which is the first European screening that I'll be able to attend. And so we're going to get an award there, at least one award, potentially more, and then also have a screening of the film. Um, and it should be pretty interesting.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, hopefully we'll be able to do a follow-up episode on the next film when it becomes public and gets out there. But yeah, again, I really enjoyed it, and again the message about the potential here, and telling the story about ALS, and a lot of themes that the public may be extremely unaware of. You touch on very elegantly, and I just again really appreciated it from our own experience in dealing with this theme on our show. But again, for everybody out there that is going to be listening to this episode across the various podcast networks, or who will be watching on the YouTube channel. Again, you've been spending time with Emmy Award winning director and filmmaker Evan Mathis. The name of the film is The Hemingway. We'll put a link in the show notes. But Evan, I really want to thank you again for coming on the show and talking to us for a little while about what you've been up to. Obviously, thank you for creating the film and creating awareness about this extremely important disease. And again, as we like to say on our show, thanks for helping to create a better tomorrow for people out there by spreading awareness and spreading the word about this space. It's really, really an awesome movie.
Great. Thanks, Ira. It's been a pleasure to be here. And, you know, again, the expectations for this film were we were gonna, kind of throw it out in the universe and see what happened. And well, we threw it out and we've had a pretty good response, I think. So I definitely appreciate your interest in the film and definitely, I'm grateful that you're helping to spread awareness about us spreading awareness about ALS.
Great having you, Evan. And I look forward to doing a follow up when the next film comes out.
Thanks, Ira.